Okay, welcome everyone to the Open Studio night at HENN as part of the Berlin Design Week. We are inviting all of you today here to tour through the studio, to grab a beer, to look at the work that we're currently doing. And our colleagues are happy to explain you if you have questions. And yeah, we're happy to engage in discussions throughout the evening. For the next 60 minutes, roughly the next hour, we're going to enjoy a few presentations and a discussion afterwards revolving around the topic of collaboration in design. And that is both in regards to the collaboration, obviously, within the office, but even more importantly, also beyond the office, our network of collaborators. A special welcome to Buro Happold, who is kind of co-hosting this event here today, and many C-Labbers and Happold colleagues I can see here already in the audience. And I think we all believe that architecture is a team effort and that the complexity of the future challenges that we're all facing can only be solved as a team. So we are convinced that we need to join forces in order to solve that. And tonight we'll give you some, I think, beautiful insights in how a collaboration can work in very different ways. The discussion afterwards will be moderated by Chiara, and I'm passing on the mic to her to introduce the speakers. Enjoy the evening. If you get thirsty, feel free to grab a beer, and let's go.
Hello, everyone. A lot of people joined. That's great to see. I'm Chiara Schüler from HENN Design Strategy Team. And part of the C-Lab Europe chapter, and I will be moderating this event. The topics that we will cover will range from social sustainability, ecological sustainability, digitization, circularity, modular timber constructions, all on a very low level, not too much in depth. We will have 3 presentations from Paula Longato, head of lighting design and a fellow C-Labber of mine, Florian Foerster, also Buro Happold, associate director, and the chapter associate and mentor of our C-Lab group. And finally, a presentation by Armin Nemati, the design director of our HENN Berlin office. And in the end, the question and answer round, open studio and drinks, and hopefully a good time. So please, Paula.
Mehr dran halten. So ist gut. Ich versuch's. Okay. Yeah. Welcome from my side too. I have the pleasure to present the C-Lab and what it is that we do there. Yeah. So what is it? A while ago, Buro Happold has set a framework, more or less, for people to spend time to, not in projects necessarily, but to think a little bit outside of the project work and develop ideas and discuss things that are relevant to us as human, to the planet, etc. And 2 years ago, 2 years ago, we've started the C-Lab in Berlin, but I will tell you. So yeah, we have allocated extra time, not extra time on top of work, but time of work that we do dedicated to the C-Lab. We talk to people, we talk amongst ourselves, we do things together, and what we are trying to do is create ideas and projects to realize these topics that we are chatting. So how the C-Lab group is organized? There is a core team, so there is participation and the will of the leadership of both companies, both HENN and Buro Happold, to provide people this time. There is a steering group steering the topics that we are discussing, and there are groups and chapters all around the world to discuss these things. So we have UK chapter, we have Europe chapter, where Chiara and I are working. There's the Pathfinder chapter, who's the first group of C-Labbers that started C-Lab. There is the MEA chapter and the US chapter. Yeah. So we try to work locally, and central means for us when we come together. So locally, doing assignments, we are working on assignments, we're debating topics, we have reading club, and this is what we have done a lot in this time of Corona in the last 2 years, discussing things. We have a mentoring from let's say the leadership of the C-Lab, and we talk a lot to external partners, and we have we try to get exposure to many topics in different levels, all the levels that we can. What we have done in the past 2 years is a lot of meetings. Just to give you an insight, when we got together for a speed dating, and what we were trying to do then is to indicate these topics or find the topics that we are all interested in, and try to find connections between ourselves so that we have different insights from different people with different interests. And then, as I said, we have done a lot of reading club in many different topics: speculative design, futurism, what is that for a topic and how does that go? Visualizing ideas, that's also an important part of it, because we need to translate what we are discussing. Simple strategies on how to do things simpler, again, speculative design. Human topics, how we humans have a relationship to the world, but also how important it is that we take care of our minds. Material, we have done a lot of discussion around materials, circular economy, also in the consequence of everything that is happening in the European Commissioning. Circular economy is a huge topic. How can we create impact as a group? And I think the final message of this reading club is really to stay curious. So we try to, we are not preventing ourselves from discussing anything. We are like open-minded, and we talk what we think and discuss. Again, meetings and meetings and meetings. So meetings hoch 3, more or less, and trainings, what we have done in the past. So we also invite leadership around the world discussing different topics. One thing I wanted to mention here is that we have also, as a group, done an interesting indexing, let's say, personality survey, more or less, to know where are we in terms of how do we work as changers. How do we change the world? Because every one of us work in a different style, in a different way, and we it's interesting this because we cannot change the world alone. We need all the different change minds in the world to create something together. We also had meetings and discussing open source circular economy. I don't know if that's a theme that you know. it's very interesting, and it comes from the software industry, where software is open source. But these guys are discussing open source everything, open source construction, open source design. How does that work? And we have also visited and discussed a lot of with these startups having already an impact in the construction world. So this is quite interesting. Some insights from what we discuss on how we not structure, but topics that we have common discussions. Creating the unknown, life space buildings, humans first approach, what I was saying previously. Encourage for better tomorrow, how we create cities, because C-Lab actually comes from city, how do we create cities? So it's not only about a building or construction industry as a whole, but how do we create cities, and how can these cities be sustainable and livable and future-proof? We talk about this a little bit about this fat-free kind of engineering. Do we need everything that we need, or how can we design buildings and cities to the absolute minimum in terms of technology? Life is a bummer, but we have solutions. Not all solutions, but we are working as a group to get there. Why does collaboration matter? So I've put this slide in because I wanted to discuss that I'm a lighting designer. I have architecture as a background, and I decided to kind of specialize. So I don't do architecture anymore. I do lighting design for architecture. So I work very directly with architects, but we also work with structural engineers. We also work with building physics. We also work with everyone. And there's beyond the, let's say, the Buro Happold structure of engineering disciplines, we have all the supporting teams above us, all the bosses, and da-da-da. And so we don't own knowledge for everything. We are pieces of puzzles that we come together, and that's the beauty of collaboration. Where does collaboration happen? So lately, collaboration has happened in a virtual world a lot, and we are now returning to the let's say the physical world again. But it's interesting about this graphic is that collaboration is about sharing knowledge and skills, and about bringing everyone together. So I'm very happy to see that this room is so full today. Thanks for coming and the interest. So big thank you for everyone to join the discussion. It was like a very brief insight on the C-Lab and what we do. Big thanks to HENN for hosting us, of course. And next stop is Rotterdam. So I was saying we are trying to get closer together, and what will happen in Rotterdam, I hope we can tell you soon, is our Congress. So we are getting everyone around the world to Rotterdam to discuss issues, city issues, climate change, water issues, etc., that are more or less related to Rotterdam and our work. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, I basically introduced you earlier. This is the next presentation will be by Florian Foerster, Buro Happold.
Can you hear me? Well, closer? That's okay. Higher. Okay. Good. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And I have a few thoughts about what does collaboration mean in my own career path for myself, and also in the collaboration with architects, HENN specifically here, and with my fellow colleagues. And I think when I was thinking about it a bit, it's quite an interesting topic, because you can see it internally within oneself, within one's own design career, and very much externally, what benefits we can see. yeah, so follow, here we go. So follow for myself at these three questions: why collaboration? What is collaboration? What could it be? And then I try to go a little bit into some examples where I think collaboration was really the structure and the energy for actually developing projects which otherwise would have not happened. I've always been, I think, from the beginning, I went into engineering and design inspired by or focused on buildings which I knew were really only possible as pieces of teamwork. And luckily, from the beginning, I was with Happold, where this attitude or this approach actually was one of their founding core strategies. I think I could not imagine, I've never worked in a specialized, siloed engineering office. That probably wouldn't be, I don't know if it would function very well there. So I've always had the benchmarks, so you come up with a huge Frauto collaboration, which was the beginning of Buro Happold with Ted Happold, and I see the same which you have with Oval, with Peter Rice and Pompidou, and what I have with you here now when we do the Forum Deutsche Sprache for the competition. We have this really strong personal relationship with your designers and our designers. And I think that's not standard in all architecture fields. From my practice, I know a lot of architectural offices who are not as openly collaborative. I know it also from the engineering practice and engineering offices. But I fundamentally believe that the positive answer to the collaboration is that in most other art forms, and architecture and engineering is fundamentally not only functional, but also an art form. You have this collective group activity around a shared goal, and you know that together you create something which is 3 times, 4 times bigger than the individual activities. You can obviously see it in music, dance, or when on the right-hand side is a little photograph of an installation at the Berghain with an artist. He needed our support, so we need to follow his ideas to get this installed. So there's a scale of project where you really want to foster this intimate knowledge within people and their skills. I try to then, when I was thinking about this, you have all these reference stories, but I try to find out what is actually the strengths of collaboration. Why is it actually stronger than me standing here alone and saying, this is my idea, you do what I want, or vice versa, I do what somebody else wants. And we often have these sort of various diagrams. I think we all love our diagrams, designers and planners often. And often we have our organigram on the left-hand side with little boxes. On the right-hand side, I'll get to that later. So when we look at all these individual elements, I think if they're isolated, we obviously add them up in a linear way. I'm often thinking, is this actually the way things work? When you actually don't look at the elements, but you look at the potential connection with them, very quickly from 2, with 2 you only have 1 connection. With 3, you have 3 elements, you have already 4 connections. Yeah, 4 connections. And so it goes up to 6, and the amount of connections increases much quicker than the individual elements. And I think if you have a design team, 3 or 4, the beauty of these collaborations is that you can hold a balance between the connections and the individual elements. And if you, instead of doing it in a sort of a linear diagram here, you draw it a little bit more like a spatial element. It sort of clicked to me that the joy of these collaborative projects is maybe the emphasis on these connections which can only happen between me and Paula, a specific connection. If 3 of us are together, then we create another dimension. So I think that helped me in a sort of theoretical way to see actually there is a reason why it's so enjoyable if it works well, and why it's sometimes quite confusing if you don't see the overlap. Okay, what does that mean in practice? Because it was quite a little theoretical diagram. Training grounds for me was very important. I think from the beginning I was left, had the environment, which I think is sort of fostered at HENN's and Happold's, regardless of your career stage, to collaborate, to meet other engineers, to meet other people in the company hierarchy, be taken to projects where you relate to the client at a different stage of project. I had that right from the beginning with Bridges, where I was allowed very quickly to develop engineering solutions with architects, which then helped to win competitions. So you knew you could only do certain things if you actually didn't do something for somebody, but with somebody. So these are projects which I did right in the beginning of my career. Very light roofs with a few little sketches. and you were listened to. You were like taken seriously in what you brought to the discussions. Again, at the collaboration with Fry Otto was something which his entire work only developed because of the dialogue he had with engineers. And it's the same when we work with more artistically or architecturally driven architects like Liebeskind. The things he developed, again, came out of the understanding of his design team, the engineers, the lighting people, this is a paper exhibition we did once, how to translate these concepts as a team. Then I move on. These were, I guess, my fundamental building blocks, why I continued to work as an engineer. And the way I try to bring that into our discussion or collaboration with HENN is, I give one example, is a brain energy project, which we won in an open competition, I think about 6 months ago. Yeah, I'm not so good with numbers, so you know, stay. So anyway, that was a winning proposal, which you might have seen in the model workshop, and it's a pin up there. And I think from the beginning we try to see this building as a set of parts where we very early on focus on developing holistically the core component, the core module. And from the beginning have workshops, have design sessions on the key backbone of this building, break it down, and then bring that back into the overall design. This is a floor plan. You can see, most of you know. And we identify the floor plan on the, here you see, you can basically all the blue squares are identical modules. And we sort of knew if we spend a lot of energy on these modules in the beginning and develop this sort of holistically for the architecture, for the TGA, for the structures, then it will fall together, and then fall together. Then it will be a bit like a real holistic design. So we break that down simply by going through the individual units early on, assessing them from all different criteria. We don't have a separate assessment, structures, TGA, architecture, try to combine all of these into one sort of, I guess we call it still a decision matrix, but I think fundamentally it's much deeper. It's much, because we basically want to do the detailed design in the early concept design, that we know that whatever concept we have, we can run it quite smoothly through the detailed design. Collate all the values. Then we have all these of course, these matrices. Closer. And which we then can present as a single matrix to the client to make a decision not only based on cost or pushed risk which are pushed away, but hopefully on a building element which is fundamentally understood in its details in the beginning. That's why we try to spend a lot of. We see these challenges here. Do we have like double beams, single beams? How do we actually arrange a module in their specific details? Something which you might normally only do when you come to the end of the scheme design. We try to bring these points into the early design process, also engage the manufacturer to check when we do timber construction. This is potentially a timber building, that we are sort of connected to the manufacturing process, to the fabrication process. Develops the challenges here. If you see again on the it's actually something to point. You see the span of the floor plans changes direction very often. So you have this at the lower part, you see the column position, where you often have the issue, how do you actually interact with these beams which are coming from different directions. And so this is an example how we try to go into the depths of these individual elements with everybody involved. We do the same for the main floors. We do the same exercise for the main columns. And we do the same for the facade. So the backbones for the buildings are hopefully holistically solved at LP2 at concept, and not everybody does their silo work and then it hopes that it gets together at LP3 or 4. Yeah. You see again, when you see, look at the module we have there, that we tested it on another project previously, and we learned a lot from that project. And on the previous project, I think the disciplines were a little bit more isolated. So now when you see the 3D visualization, now we want to have this 3D visualization working for all disciplines at the same time. And that's, I guess, sort of the ideal combination for me, and a very beneficial way to apply collaborative design holistically very early on. Very enjoyable project. This was the previous project. This is an example from the previous project. We want our brain energy to be sort of cleaner, not things tucked into units which in itself are very modular and clean, and or partition walls which don't really fit to the beauty of a prefabricated unit. So we try to be a bit more ambitious, I guess, to bring it all together into one package. This is I put this is our team organigram, which is a little bit different than our. Maybe we have to revisit it after my first diagrams because it's very linear still. I think we need to have a bit more circles, Happolds. Okay, so this is sort of the approach we use to fairly, I would say, brain energy still is within the realm of fairly conventional projects. It's high end and ambitious, but I think but it's still within a framework, I would say, of a very not particularly risk friendly client. A little bit, we have to, legally speaking, and I guess from a business case. I throw in a few projects which helped me a lot to say, one has the confidence with the right people to test a lot of things which are normally not built. And the people who work with me at Happold probably know it, but I've worked for many years with very small projects and people from the design scene, which is a bit more fringy. And they allowed me to build things and to have a design approach which I think feeds back into these big projects, but it's unusual, and it's good for people from the architecture profession to know they're around in Berlin. You can collaborate. In C-Lab, we try to collaborate with these people because they push in a way the architectural thought, I find, and they test what can be done. They have a different building practice, often a different value system also, in why they do things. But I think it gives you a different framework of collaboration, and it's most of the work is done with the Raumlabor crowd, which is basically next door doing the whole statistic. You can follow it. We've worked with them, Happold has worked with them for many years, and I think we benefited in different engineers to have projects which normally you don't get exposed to. So you run a really quick example. This was a little building we did in Holland, which is it's a chuck of luck, it's called. It's basically, you turn it every summer season. It's a playground. So you have 6 different ways to play this little square, this little cube with its staircases. Then we did a fully recycled project out of old steel drums for an exhibition in Nuremberg. Again, when you have these projects, you have to invent the approaches to engineering, because obviously all outside the code. You still have to go to a checking engineer, you have to convince them, you still have to go through these formal processes. But the key thing is that you really want to have these more artistically driven visions realized. This is probably the lightest shell structure I've ever built. It's outside temporary shell structure in Berlin for a week, which was designed probably within 2 weeks by intense collaboration with the people who build it and the checking engineer. So, and improvise, there was a lot of improvisation on that. You go to a certain point and then you say, we can't do this, we want to install something else. So it's a very fluid, non-structured design and construction process. Same assembly, same installation. We're very much involved from its beginning, and I can only encourage anybody who is involved in design to go there during the summer seasons in the Floating University project, which won the Golden Lion, I think, last year, which is this always evolving structure, debating place. They have of architects, designers, artists next to Tempelhof. Again, most structures are built on an entirely small budget, partially built by the architects themselves, by volunteers. Some engineers there have help, and it's fascinating. It's like a constant building lab with one-to-one models. These are different, every year you obviously see this different way of staging it. This is this year's. Staging is a bit more with the bamboo and the reed from the environment. You get incredibly interesting construction details, and like it's probably the lightest inflatable roof I've ever been involved in on a couple of with a budget probably altogether from 15,000 euros, and which then works very well with that site. Another project we did with them was always playing for the Ruhr Triennale in Bochum. Again, lots of temporary projects, lots of short programs, only possible because we know how they work, they know how we work, and there's a fundamental sort of feeling of trust, and we get it done. So it's a bit like when you work with Frauotto, I think there was always this idea, in the end he gets it done. And there's very little, what you say in German, like Bedenkenträger, also is very, very rare. It's more like an overabundance of enthusiasm. That was one where they had an old aeroplane which they had to disassemble and reinstall every year in different formations to arrange the stages around. And it's a benefit of, I think it's a great contribution to Buro Happold that we have this range of projects from these really small ones where you can test these things, and young engineers can test their skills if they like to work, and these massive ones, which we also know. So I think it gives people this opportunity to play, and there's a sort of playfulness, which I think is incredibly important in collaboration, that it isn't too organized. There's something which comes out of the process. And Roundabout is sort of the extreme of process-driven architecture, considering that they have never built a permanent building. I think this is a previous sculpture project I did with a lot with materials. I think it also with collaboration. Interesting is to work with materials you don't know, and then you have to collaborate with people and fabricators, and you have to find ways to understand them yourself. This did for quite a while larger structures, interior structure out of cardboard and paper. We built it ourselves, I think. We went down for the weekend, and then after the engineering, we had a weekend in London and built it. It's fun, too. And this was a small little mobile theater, which had to be put into a truck. Again, this was done And then we built, in our team, we built street furniture for the Deutsche Bahn. So you go from completely different scales, they're falling up, and then you see you can use engineering skills as an incredible good tool to collaborate, because you understand the way construction could work. Sometimes the designers or the artists have very little understanding of certain physical laws and tools which we have as engineers. And I think once people know there's a benefit, you can go to any scale. A little mobile basing pod, where there was a concept that the water heats in these tubes. And you sit in the bottom, and then sit at the bottom and you can warm yourself up. And then we do quite a bit of outreach work. This was with a university in Spain, where we support the students to collaborate with us. And again, for us, for the younger engineers, or for myself, it's a huge test to translate student work into real structures. This was something we did in Dessau, where we tested the digital fabrication lab they had there, and so that's I would say the example of the project which sort of give me energy to bring this back into brain energy to say, yeah, things can be done. And because I think from the nature of many projects, or quite a few projects, this to do things fresh is not always encouraged, unfortunately. I think that's nearly the end. I think one part of collaboration is, I think it's maybe a topic to itself. How do we actually communicate it to the outside? How do we communicate our ideas? And from over the years, I think I've developed, I guess, a position that you throw as many tools at this problem as possible. If obviously my attitude, my approach is I work more with models. I worked on with improvised models with some wires and washing rulers and something like that, and take a photo and send it to the architect. Works. and or sketches, then obviously you back it up with some analytical models. It works. So, but you go in from all sides. You don't try to tackle the problem only with your own with one from one perspective. And the bigger the clearer the team is, the clearer the understand each other, I think the more surprising the results are. I think that's it. I think it's the longest presentation.
Thank you both for your presentations. Just before we start with Armin's presentation, can everybody also in the back hear well? No? Okay. We are changing the microphones now, so hopefully that one will work better. But you all have beer, so that's fine, yeah? So you're not unhappy?
Super.
Okay, good.
Hello,
Right.
can you hear me? Does the microphone work? Yeah? All right. Good. Okay. So from the design studio, a little bit the perspective. I mean, first of all, maybe what is the task that we at HENN in the early phase that we have really need to solve, and why collaboration is kind of important for us at this position? I think actually the pattern that we have in the studio is something that is quite repetitive. I mean, we have a brief that we need to read, we get a colloquium, we get an info, and usually after analyzing that, you get quite quick out that the interests are maybe different. It's not so easy to solve. You have a budget, which is usually too low. You have a program which generally doesn't fit easy in the envelope what the people actually think could be built there. And you have a site which is generally full of constraints, especially if you're in Europe. It's quite difficult to get all these interests in. And basically, it's kind of these four topics that you see always coming again and again. And out of that ingredients, you need to come up with envision kind of buildings or answer with structures that are quite complex. And if you see here in the Forum Deutsche Sprache, I will talk on that a bit later, it's the effort of many people to get that set in a way. Here is an example of the Großmarkthalle in Munich, where we found out to generate a different typology, let's say, for the wholesale market. The Gasteig, where we actually choose an approach to build, let's say, a very small building, while other people even tear down the whole Philharmonic Hall. It wasn't the first thought, maybe, that we would have had. Developing Brainergy, like you said, like the center of a research campus that's going to be developed now. A modular building, very technologically driven also. Buildings like the distillery in Austria, it's a project that I quite like a lot, where modularity meets the landscape. And you still kind of have something like an interesting experience path, let's say, through an industrial process. Collaborations that we do with CF Möller, once we try to work on the healthcare base, where we really try to break down these very large structures, which was an interesting project at Georgsheil. You will see that also as a model in the other room. And for instance, the recent project that we did just got the win of the competition last week, the Georgia Tech Institute in China. So it's quite different varieties, different answers in a very fast time. It's 42 projects that we had to do in the last year. So that means it's kind of 2 months in the pace that you need to go forward and always reinvent new ideas, bring always new thoughts together out of a complex field. And that's only possible if you have a team. It just doesn't work out in a different way. The interests, the directions that you have are difficult. And it was interesting what you showed with the network graph in a certain way, how that works together. Because I was also thinking a little bit, how do they actually work together? And for me in the studio, it's for sure some connection in a certain part, but it's really difficult to say how it works. I just couldn't make the graph, let's say, in a certain way. I was just thinking it's interesting that you have different fields. And for sure, in the center of that field, there is not the design. It's a lot of different parts that come together, and they try to find out what is that center and what is it going to be. And it's, if we see, like, for instance, the topics that we have here, it's more internal parts of programming, design system, how the clients react, how the models work, how the quantity survey is. But it's also a larger bubble because we have a lot of other people in our team that come up from climate engineering to MEP to healthcare to specialists in laboratories to traffic structures. Like within, I would say, a week, if the project is complex, it's about 20 people, and you still don't know what is going to be really the driver of the whole thing. And that's the point where kind of this, I just call it vision or the concept in a certain way kicks in. You need to develop that together. Because at the end of the day, what we see, the interesting projects are those ones that develop a certain vision together and the team kind of works behind it. So what we see is really crucial, that you don't come into idea with a certain design that's just going to be, but that you start very, very early to share ideas. And that's a cultural thing also. I mean, at least when I think of my time back, architecture was really hierarchical. It was really like, there was like a design, everybody needs to do that. And then maybe the people also are just not so much into it, because at the end of the day, they might just don't like the idea or the concept of it. But the moment where you kind of have this idea developed together and you're able to kind of generate a vision together and share ideas really early, really simple, you have a good chance that that design can really have a benefit of it. What have we seen that helped us, let's say, in the last 1-2 years to get better at this? Because we're far away from being there, but we see it's a process that starts, and it would be good to go further with it. What we've seen, what helped was that a lot of people needed to go digital. It was actually, as a communication tool, really helpful. I think most of the things that we do in architecture, still, we like our models, it's very analog and we need it. But the way that we just suddenly have like an infinite canvas that we can use, where everybody can just contribute, collaborate, and see together what's happening, was actually a big help for us. Building information modeling, even in the early phase, it's really helpful that we just have suddenly a central file and people slowly start to get out of this mode to send the file, go back, but actually start to talk on the project in real time. It's helping us a lot. And always finding where kind of possibilities are to have interactions that bring us together. So one of the main things we like and see that helps is obviously also the topic sustainability that finally arrived, let's say, at politicians in mainstream and also at the clients, because the biggest issue what we see when it comes to that topic is not that architects don't want to do that. I don't know a single architect that says sustainability is bad, but clients maybe just won't pay the extra money that you need in a certain part. And the sustainability is also the topic that brings us all the disciplines in a certain way together, because it's just like not this this little sticker that you put at the end on top. It's going through all disciplines, through all fields. And the more kind of common things and glue we find between each other is the thing that helps us. 2 projects I would like to show you that came out of this process quite nicely. One is the Forum Deutsche Sprache. Here you see one time the board that we generated during that process, also together with Buro Happold, where on the left side you just see really the brief, how it kind of starts, and then how this whole project starts to evolve. And everybody is just allowed to write in there, to have their own opinions, to criticize the parts. And interestingly, in the beginning, when this process started, a lot of people were asking, but who has the rights to write? Who has the rights to comment? Who has the rights to note? It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, because if the people start to develop the things, they just do it at the right time by themselves. And it's not only 3-4 people. Now, if we have competitions like in Gastec, for instance, we were 27 people in the competition when you just kind of see all consultants and everybody that was working on the project. It's a competition, but it's still a large project team, and it needs to go fast. In the Forum Deutsche Sprache, the interesting thing was the location. First of all, because it's a building that sits actually at the absolutely correct position in Mannheim, where a lot of different cultures kind of meet together, a lot of different languages kind of merge together. And for us, it was an interesting building because it came across first a bit as a museum. We were thinking, is it a museum? We have an exhibition space. Actually, it's a forum. It's a bit more this talking, inviting people. And at the end of the day, we've realized it's actually more a research building. And that was the interesting part, because the Forum Deutsche Sprache is a building that wants to invite you by an attractor. So it's a building that wants to lure you in a certain way by having this exhibition space. People need to engage and talk to the scientists and give their language as a donation. And that donation is the thing that is the base for the scientists to research on. And they are sitting just on top of it. And the building is something that's very accessible. So we developed a lot the path, how the people kind of actually go into that one, how they kind of move through this central atrium, generate a certain awareness that what actually the real topic of that building is about. Get through this communication platform, all one by one. There is nearly no chance to avoid that communication platform by the building. Getting interviewed, donating their language if interested, move upwards through the building more in an exploration mode, let's say, where it pushes you from this atrium space in this in-between space of the facade and the actual exhibition part. And then moving upwards to the terrace, where you can have actually a view to the outside and also see the areas of the researchers. We had small models to build on that, kind of seeing where staircase it could move, how like the open space was, a lot of discussion about that in the team. We shared a lot of very simple sketches during the process, absolutely, some parts really unfinished, quick, easy, fast. How could the grillage be? Would it be better as a wooden part? Can we use the cores made by rammed earth? How this in-between space should be? How is the visibility? And it ended up in an image that kind of got generated by all participants with their specific part, and that just resembles actually what the basic idea of the building was. You have this inviting entrance situation that you want, absolutely openness to the public. You have on the first level a certain space where you can experience the topic of the language. You go in this exploration mode through this staircase that brings you slowly up to the terrace. You have the overview over the site, and you have this glimpse into the scientific research part. Second project that I would like to show you is, especially if you've seen like these large buildings and the great campus universities with their central buildings, something, let's say, quite different. It's a project where we collaborate together with, let's say, I think it's more than 20 scientists under the guidance of Professor Kurbach, to apply to funds also to get a large research center built, where a lot of different scientists kind of team up and try to get into this topic. And one of the topics that he was kind of chosen was to generate, let's say, a new sustainable way of building. But the goal is not just to create, let's say, these sustainable buildings at first. It's actually to put this sustainability as a basis for human life. And the process was quite similar as we have it in the competitions. We have a large board, we bring all the ideas together and try to find out what could maybe be a little bit of a difference within this campus. So what they came up was that it's actually more interesting to work like in larger clusters together, not in their disciplines as they are. We know that there are some interdisciplinary work, and that's kind of what the new learning and teaching method is about. But the interesting part is that they wanted to overlay it with topics that are relevant for the society. And that kind of was the interesting shift in the discussion also, and generate out of that topics that could be related for the building industry, and kind of have, let's say, a compass developed that gives you a direction where these different science could actually go for. And putting that campus as a crystallization point at an area which is weak developed, had a hard impact out of the coal industry, but be kind of a crystallization core that's able to spread over other areas and kind of have a positive impact to them. So the building has to be part of this transition of how this landscape was in the former parts, but also the program needs to be it. So within this project, for instance, there was planned a lot of housings and other parts, but obviously the campus is situated in an area where there might be a lot of empty flats. So maybe the people could use them and you just don't need to build up the whole housing project at the same time. Also, the structure of the campus should be very, I would say, calm. It shouldn't be a loud project. It should be decentralized. There shouldn't be like one glamorous feeling about it, but every building should be able to become at one time part of the center of that campus. So each building has all the ingredients what it needs, is modular set up, and follows the idea of the different disciplines that they kind of have, but it's not necessarily said that the scientific approach of the building on the left side is going to be always the center. Maybe it just changes and it's one day the building on the right side. So that's a bit the idea of setting up this campus on different topics and bringing the scientists in there together. And the whole campus should also just blend into the part. It's still development. We're just saying it would be even nice to have a bit more render power for the next days on this one, but I think it's an interesting one for you to see. And this campus needs to be like a very simple, adaptable structure that people can build by their own, that allows you easily to have prototypes built and set up. It's something that should give a framework for other people to arrive, but also kind of engage the people that are developing those parts to come up with their own solutions. It needs to be expandable, very easy, low in size, and still having kind of the possibilities to develop special buildings out from third parties. So with all these projects, communication, still we need some topics of interest also that we have. I mean, I think it's quite clear that HENN is a company that's used to be especially interesting for communication and innovative spaces in that way. I mean, it's buildings that we do, buildings that we like, also a culture kind of that we have. But we've seen these 4 projects, some topics that I think are interesting, and we are always eager to get new inputs and new information from the outside much more. So one is, as an example now, this wholesale market in Munich, where we see that the synergy of the functions and the combination of the functions starts to generate a different typology. The ideas that we kind of work on with the Gasteig, where we see that actually building less can really bring also a larger structure to work, and that you kind of are able to do that. You don't need to tear down the whole Philharmonic Hall to kind of refurbish a large cultural institution. The unity of landscape and architecture, a part which is, luckily we have really good collaborations with great landscape architectures, but we see it's just getting more and more important, and we need to learn much more on that topic. And the modularity that we have, for instance, in the brainage part. So that's kind of a bit the points where we see we need to gain knowledge. We can create it on our side also, but it's just going to work out through collaboration to have that kind of set. That's why also this last image that's here, because it's just something that always remembers me in a way, because we are a team of different people with different setups. Like, for instance, that project was from Klaus Ransmayr or from Leander also here, but it is a project that changed a little bit also our approach to work in the studio. It was an interesting example of how it went on. You did the programming, I think, on this one, with even meeting the client up, and yeah, it's a positive step that we see that goes on there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Armin. Thank all of you for your very insightful presentations. I would invite you to move your chairs around the table here to start our Q&A. And stage is yours now. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll give you the mic. Annie, great.
Thanks for the presentation, super interesting. I'm curious how HENN and how Buro Happold, or as individuals, you would define sustainability. I think it's become kind of a buzzword, and I think we're starting to wonder what that means, and does it really have any meaning anymore?
Maybe we can use this one here.
The mic may be easier.
The mic is easier.
It's the mic chaos, you know.
That's quite an interesting question, and it ties in. I went last Saturday. I went to a conference at the Floating University, which was, I think, the ARC Plus this month is about it. It's a cohabitation, and that was sort of the, I guess, avant-garde end of sustainability, which sees designing for the non-human world, basically plants, animals. Humans are an integral part of this network. We all know this. Humans don't exist or couldn't exist. I mean, it's a common. So I think sustainability as a approach is incredibly important to the way I look at things more and more, and to a certain extent, corporately to Happold as well. Probably, but slightly different understanding maybe. Yeah, but I think when it has to be seen in the widest possible context to enable, I guess, a continuation of natural space we can exist in, we want to live in, or actually we can exist in, and which is only possible in evolution. And evolution, I guess, has two aspects. It has a competition, but it has collaboration. Evolution would never develop without collaboration. So we have to fundamentally understand that we have to collaborate with the natural processes around us. And if we don't, obviously, it's not particularly good for our position.
This is the interesting mic. Well, I think from our side, sustainability, I'm pretty sure it is a word, as you mentioned, also used quite widely, and what it is in a certain way. I think for sure we don't want to be or to develop projects that are kind of trying to fulfill certain codes or parts like this. I think we're very based on seeing what the local situations are and how we can, let's say, be a little bit a part of a solution to find something out that works there a little bit better. So I think, to say general, this is now the main goal of sustainability. It just doesn't work, because it's really depending on which part you have to look. And that's in the design, a lot of things very site specific. But I see that we start slowly processes where we realize that we don't only fulfill codes, but we try to bring an active role into being a part of the solution. Like if I think of a warehouse project, for instance, that was driven by the programming team here, also with you together, no? You see that the idea of this whole warehouse, let's say, and the development of this warehouse is not only to build smart and intelligent, but kind of find even different sites, find different crops that clean up the soil that is there around, and kind of really to make the environment better in that kind of sense.
Can I add? Just adding from, let's say, a C-Lab perspective, I think sustainability is a buzzword, but there is no other better word actually, because it is the ability to sustain. So we need, and the perspective of sustainability is not one alone. How many different parts are there that create sustainability? And there is also not one answer to sustainability. There are multiple answers, and the multiple answers are also, let's say, multi-layered. When we learn about circular economy, for example, we learn about materials, we learn about processes, we learn about manufacturing, we learn about design, we learn about the use, we learn about the reuse, we learn about it's so many different aspects that we consider to create something sustainable, and not to forget the human using it, and not only the human, but create something that is not only for humans, because at the end we are part of nature, right? We cannot extract ourselves from nature. So it's, yeah, multi-layered, I would say, kind of answer.
Do we have any other questions? Also, please, people in the back, don't be shy, or in the front. Do you have questions? No more questions. Okay, then maybe I have a. Oh, okay. You were Closer, you were louder.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a question, but for me, it's like you emphasize the obvious. So the collaboration should be standard. So I don't know what it leads to actually. So that's, I don't know if this is a question again, because I think, what does it mean in the future? Maybe you say, we step back from the specialism so that we, because now in the planning world, there are a lot of different types of people working together. And that's what I understand under collaboration. So what is the difference you are saying actually? Do you know what I mean, or is it?
I think it's the way, in a certain way, how you collaborate. So, at least in the architecture world, from my side, what I see is in the early phase, like really in the design part, especially, it's the development of an idea, and it's this dialogue that you have, that kind of having one idea is kind of the main driver, is being deformed by other ideas, and they suddenly start to change, and that's the moment where really interesting designs can emerge, let's say, or interesting parts can emerge. And that, I think, is there are hundreds of ways of collaborations. I mean, if I would think just back 10 years from you, as somebody just draw this and get this build and do it, is also collaboration. But it's, I think, this changement of this hierarchical order, what you said, in a large part, and to being able to have more interconnectivities that you have in between. And that just has a surprising effect, often in a positive way.
So be open-minded.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's good to go away from building, and that's why I showed one photo. If you compare it with music, it's obvious. And say if you have a jazz band or orchestra, you have your field where you want to be really as good as you can, but you can only exist because of the understanding of collaboration. And as Armin said, you create something much bigger. And that's something, that's that feeling of you need this group to follow a certain, in a music performance, a certain vision of that performance. That's something in the building terms is actually quite rare, that you have a team where they follow a deeper idea. Everybody normally protects their silo. That's why I know so many projects where people, well, this can't be done because I haven't done that before. Either this is, or it can't be done because I have to do some more work. So it's a listening skill, I guess, and being aware that your discipline is a tiny little tool for the big idea. And I think that's why that's what I would explain.
I have a different view. I think collaboration is not new. Yeah, we have been collaborating since forever, but I think what the key thing that we are trying perhaps to sell here or to show you is the broader vision. So if we are following in the one direction, it doesn't matter what is the target. If we go to this final target, actually the final target nobody knows, but there is a common vision and common goal. And I think collaboration happens when everyone is on board of the same vision. If I don't agree with your vision, we can work together, but we will not collaborate. I think this is, let's say, the thing that sticks people together and guide to this fruitful collaboration, let's say. No.
No? Very nice.
There was another question in the back.
Hello. My first two different questions or comments. The first comment is regarding sustainability as an aesthetic. Although I think that is true to a certain extent, I find that sustainable tends to be more technical than aesthetic. That it's perhaps the marketing part of sustainability. So just leaving that in the air, I'd be interested to hear your comments on that. And the second is regarding collaboration. If you were to imagine a spectrum where you would have a fully democratic process or a collaborative process on one end, on the other side of the spectrum, a rigid vertical structure, what is the sweet spot within that spectrum to be the ideal working scenario? And bringing back into that comment, the aspect of vision. Is vision truly possible when you have a fully collaborative process? And to finish that, I leave the example where a camel is effectively a horse designed by committee. So how do you imagine maintaining a vision within the spectrum of collaboration and vertical hierarchy?
No. I'm lost.
Well, maintaining that vision, I think, is quite an experiment for us also. Like sometimes the vision just fades away. Yeah? It just happens. It can happen. It's the truth. You can fight to get it back, but it definitely, I would be really happy to know the perfect way to get that set. It would make me glad. I don't know it. But there are common ways, and that's why I mean with share the interests early, that you have a good chance that the visions are aligned, because you at the very first stage you realize that the people have a common interest, so you're able to kind of get the channel better. Regarding the sustainability question that you had, I think that's for us, especially when we say these new aesthetics and technology and parts like this, we're also right in between we're not there at the end, I think. So it is often something quite technological. Sometimes it can also be greenwashing from a part. You try to avoid it as much as possible, but it would be a lie to say that there is no greenwashing around. But it's something that's also very much related to the clients. And I think there it's interesting to see that by just maybe it were even greenwashing projects that brought the people there, more and more people think about low-tech, about having an idea how the building could work without a maximum of energy supply. They would be happy that they would not die a death of heat if the gas is not arriving. So it is like a changement of a thought within the clients and the people that also challenge us. And so I think it's just the middle part of the journey that we're in. So unfortunately, an ideal answer, I don't see there, no?
Yeah, I answer the last question first. I think the aesthetic question is fairly straightforward to solve. And I think, as Armin said, there's the new aesthetic which includes a different feeling of just nature and our relationship to nature. And that's definitely not going to be primarily solved through technology, but what we expect from a space, how we feel well, how we act psychologically also, and how we can use it. For landscape design, you look at, here in Berlin, you look at the Tempelhofer Feld, probably the most low-tech park, one of the most functioning parks. So you can, or you look at Lacaton Salzburg or your Gasteig work, you have a building where you do actually minimal intervention. It probably works better than building a new high-tech building from a perspective of sustainability. So I think that's just a mindset which slowly will change. And the first question, what was the was the first one was the aesthetic one, and the second one was?
Repeat.
No, just the
Collaboration and keeping the vision.
Yeah, I don't know that so-called sweet spot. I do not know that, and I've seen groups, collectives, like Roundabout, for example, is a collective. There's no partner. It's always been a collective. It surprisingly works for 20 years, and none of these ideas could have been developed without that collective. Now, but I also know hierarchical structure which work really well in a very creative way. So I do not think there is a single, there's probably different perspectives in different societies with different people who not everybody can work in a collective structure and wants to. Some people have it, so I don't know a clear guiding answer to that one. But I always like to go from one space into another one. I think it's very interesting to work with somebody who's extremely hierarchical and then go to some group which is entirely collective.
And a different perspective again. I agree that sometimes sustainability is taken to a technological level of nobody understands anymore what we are doing, or can use the building. We see this all the time. But are we not breaking this paradigm to say, and reviewing what we are doing, really, to perhaps do less? And by doing less, it becomes more beautiful? Less is more, perhaps. And on the collaboration, I think there's one thing that we haven't mentioned in collaboration. I think the vision is one thing. Armin mentioned this in his presentation. But teamwork is also something. So it needs to work together. We need to work as a team or collaborate as a team. So I know that you will do what you will do, and I trust you and go. And you trust me that I do what I'm supposed to do. So, and this kind of team, and everyone is there for each other. This teamwork is essential, I think, for collaboration. Yeah.
One thing. I just want to add one thing. I think what came out, what Armin also said and what you just said, I think I learned so much more from my team or from the than that I gives to the team. Or when you show the mirror boards, everybody, 27 people, basically share their thoughts. Very quickly, you have a wealth of knowledge which you could never get in any other way.
Yeah, we definitely learned a lot in the last 2 years of C-Lab. I'm going to take one last question. I've seen Leander right here, but maybe maybe there's another question since you're at home, basically. No other questions? Yeah, okay. Sorry, Leander.
Hello. I have a question from management view. How you deal with client expectation and the changes?
You want to start? Yeah. I do the second.
I think there is a small space where you can help, let's say, a little bit or influence the decision that's going to happen. It's a small one, but I think you have, as an architect, also the responsibility to do so. And well, from the feeling, let's say, even in, let's say, the large projects in China that we are doing, it would have been absolutely impossible to think that the large housing and residential areas, what they want to do for campuses, are going to be made out of wood. Like the moment where you would put the wood panel there, the client would have gone. And it's just not the case anymore, because you just try it, you keep trying, you keep going. And this is what you need to do. So I think that's the only thing what you can do, because to influence a client who gives you a job is not an easy task.
If we think back to the team thing, the client is part of the team. It's not the client hires us to do something, whatever it is that we are doing. He also has a vision. He needs perhaps to share his vision with the planning team. And then the planning team takes not the vision, but the vision and the client, and develops it to something that will end in something unknown, perhaps. Yeah. And change part of the process, part of the planning process. So if you start something and you say, "Oops, here's a wall, we cannot go further," do a detour, go somewhere else. It's part of, but the client needs to be in the team to be able to see where changes are going, and yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, I think you probably said it all in better words, but I think change is part of design for me. Change is actually, there's no idea of static design, and that's in any phase. So I can deal with, that's, I think, if you have a good group structure, it can work. Now with a client expectation, I think is as long as there's an overall shared view, aim, and it's not which sometimes happens, you don't become entirely sort of an outside service provider, and it becomes a sort of element of greenwashing, or in sustainability terms, but it can also be in other parts of design. I think, yeah, you can happily work with a client. If that isn't the case, then I think at some stage now I probably would say, actually, yeah, we worked together once, but thanks, but no thanks. So it's all, I think you foster, same as you have collaborators in design, you need to have collaborators with client who want to go somewhere else. I mean, we know all here probably there's a large chunk of the construction industry which is resistant to any change. And so that is a group which I don't have to lecture to that group for 2 years if I can work with somebody else who wants change. So.
I had the feeling Armin wanted to say something more, but I think time is up. So thank you all so much. Thank you for the questions. We didn't have any questions online. I feel cutting you off. Maybe you can ask later. And now I think the studio is open to roam around and connect and maybe collaborate in future.
Your presentation was